Welcome to Building Better Relationships with Chuck and Barb Lewis, equipping listeners and viewers with the biblical tools to conquer the difficulties faced in this life. Chuck has practiced crisis intervention since the 1980s and has been in ministry together with his wife Barb for over 20 years. They've taken the countless lessons and the knowledge they've acquired and have put them into this life skills class to share with you. We hope this blesses you.
Well, good morning. I'm Pastor Chuck Lewis, and this is my wife.
I'm Barbara.
And we're excited to be with you again for another program on building better relationships. And we trust that these videos are helpful to you. I know they're helping us. For sure, they're helping me.
Whenever you teach something, I think you learn it better than the people you're teaching.
Oh, boy, absolutely. And you know, it's kind of neat because it makes you practice what you're teaching. And it's a lot easier to teach something than to practice it. But we're trying to practice what we preach or practice what we teach. So
that's right.
So what's our topic today?
Today we're going to call it Rules of Engagement, and we're talking about communication skills.
Yes.
And you know, I just, before I met you, Chuck, I never really experienced working through conflict all the way to resolution. So that was a new experience for me. And you know, when we would talk about things, in fact, when we were dating, we started going to marriage seminars so that I could learn the things that you already knew.
Well, and could brush up on for sure.
Yes. I mean, we've never arrived. We're always in process.
Right.
But I remember that even when I was learning these things, I really felt like I wanted to run away whenever we had conflict. And sometimes my running away would just be to go to the bathroom
Sure.
and sit in there. But I just was so afraid of conflict. I was afraid that things would never be the same and that we wouldn't work through it. And I think I felt pretty deficient too. I don't think I always felt equal to your ability to communicate. And I didn't have as many words as you did, which usually in a male-female relationship, the wife has more words than the husband does, but it wasn't the same, for me. I didn't always express what I was feeling. And I think the thing that was really hard for me too is I noticed that sometimes the conflict got worse before it got better.
Right.
And so I really had to make a decision to hang in there. But to work through things all the way to resolution was such an amazing feeling. And I remember one night, it took us 3 hours to work through something. And I remember thinking of all the tasks I could have had done, I could have completed in the time that it took us to work through a conflict, but it was so worth it.
Yeah, right.
It was so worth it.
Well, and really, when you think about tools and skills, and what I used to feel like learning all these tools and skills were impossible at one time. I mean, I just thought, I'll never get this. I know how to do it wrong. Yes. I just don't know how to change it or make it work better. Yes. And this is not about perfection. It's not about getting to a point where you do every single thing perfect. In fact, we kind of leave out the word perfect out of our vocabulary because that's an unobtainable goal.
Right.
To arrive at that. But practice makes you better. And the more you practice something, the better you get at it. And so when I started learning these tools and skills, I thought, it feels kind of bogus. And I hear this all the time from other people, that when we're doing something different than we've ever done before, it's like, I just cannot do this. This feels so mechanical. It doesn't feel natural and all that stuff. And to this day, I don't know how natural it feels, but I guess what I try to do and what we both try to do is we need to look at the result and say, what do I want to see take place here? Do I want to see the same thing that's not working continue to happen over and over? Or do I want to try something, that works? So there's real benefits of trying something that you
Yes.
haven't done before and see it work much more effectively.
Well, that was really important for me, that I saw that it did work. And like I said, I hadn't experienced that before. I think in in other relationships, I experienced build up, blow up.
Mm-hmm.
You would just let things build up until you blew up, and then you didn't really resolve it, but you wouldn't mention it again
Yeah,
until something else triggered it.
right.
And feelings that are buried, they don't go away.
They don't.
And I think we don't want to feel feelings because they can be so uncomfortable. But if we let ourselves feel them and express them,
Mm-hmm.
then they can go away.
Well, and when you bury
For
those
real.
unresolved issues,
Yes,
you bury them alive,
that's right.
and they're never dead, and so
That's
they
right.
come up. It's interesting when we get into a situation. It's very common for like 10 other issues to come up in that
Yes.
one setting, and we're talking about so many unresolved issues now. We forgot the original one that we were talking about.
That's right.
So nothing ever gets resolved. But you
that-
have to take it one at a time.
That's right. And that's one of the reasons why I like rules of engagement, because one of the rules is that you don't bring up the kitchen sink.
Right.
You stick to one issue.
One
And if
issue.
another issue comes up, you can jot it down on a piece of paper and talk about it later. But right now, you are sticking with what just happened.
Yes.
You don't need to go back and say something that happened 10 years ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever.
Right.
It's sticking with what just happened.
What just happened, and it's very important that you may not resolve that issue in one setting.
Good
So,
point.
like if you start at 7 o'clock at night and you think, well, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about this before we get to bed. Well, maybe 10 o'clock you're still talking about it and it's not resolved. You don't keep going until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
until you're trying to resolve it, because now you're exhausted and your patience is a lot thinner.
Right.
You say, okay, let's talk about this for 2 hours, and then let's take a break if it's not resolved. And we might have to come address this again tomorrow or in a week or whatever time frame you have.
Right.
It's good to pick a time frame where you don't have a limited amount of time. In other words, if you only have 10 or 15 minutes, you can look at that and say, well, let's try to resolve it in that amount of time, and you're just getting into it and then you run out of time.
Yeah.
That's not good.
What we learned about, for me, is that we couldn't talk about issues on my lunch hour. When I was working, which
Right.
I'm retired now, but
Yeah.
when I was working, for us to talk about something at lunch
Mhm.
and then not resolve it and have to go back to work very upset,
Yeah.
that was not good. So we did learn that was not a good time.
And sometimes we met for lunch and didn't even plan on getting into an issue. But it just started happening because of what was said. It triggered different things that
Yeah.
we needed to talk about, which is very common. But
Yes.
like Barb said earlier, if something is triggered while you're talking, maybe over lunch or whatever, you just jot it down, you just put it on your phone or whatever for another time
Mhm.
to bring it up. Of course, if you know what each other's doing, you might say, what'd you just put on your phone? But you don't do that. You just reserve that for another time. And when you really have the time to really go into it, and when you go into it, it's very important to really hear each other, you do the mirroring skill where you're giving each other a turn to talk about how you're feeling about it, and then when you mirror back and affirm the other person's feelings, and really make sure that you're hearing it accurately, because that's the purpose of mirroring, is to hear the information correctly.
Right.
Because you can be saying something and I can hear something completely different than what you're saying.
Right.
And if I don't mirror it back, and mirroring not only the words that you said, but the interpretation
Yeah, what you got from it.
of what you meant, what I
Mhm.
got from it, well, then you don't know the other person really got it.
That's right. And we actually had little business card size things in our headboard
Yes.
in our bedroom because we were so busy. It seemed like it was always nighttime by the time we'd be able to talk about things. And one of the cards had the speaker rules on it, and the other one had the listener rules on it. So only one person gets to speak at a time.
Right.
You take turns speaking. The listener is listening, is mirroring back for understanding, is maybe asking some good open-ended questions like, could you tell me more about that?
Right.
Or how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
And the speaker has the floor because you both can't talk at the same time. And the listener has to listen because sometimes when the other person's speaking, we're not listening to what they're saying.
Not listening.
We're thinking about what we're going to say when it's our turn.
We become like a defense attorney.
Right.
We're trying to win our case.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it also says on that speaker card that one of the rules is, again, not bringing up the kitchen sink, sticking to one topic.
Right.
And so for me, it really helped me to have some structure because, structure brings order into chaos. And when you're having a conversation that starts going north or whatever, it's not going right, then structure really helps.
South.
That could be.
You
can go north or
south. Yeah.
It's just not staying on track.
Right.
But another thing you mentioned too is that you might not resolve it the first time.
Right.
And it seemed like whenever we had an issue that was very serious, it would take us 3 times.
Oh yeah.
And each time that we would take a break, it would help me get more distance from the feelings, and I would be better able to talk about it. But it seems like the first time the feelings were so volatile and so fresh, I might have trouble validating what you were feeling or hearing. I was just so triggered.
Yes.
That I had a hard time.
Well, and one of the keys here of really resolving it, in a way you want it to be resolved, is I cannot go into the conversation wanting to win.
Oh.
If I go into it and say, okay, all right, I'll follow the rules of engagement and I'll listen to what you're saying, but in my mind, I'm saying I'm still going to win. I'm going to win this battle because I'm the man of this family and it's going to be my way and all this stuff. Well, you're defeating the purpose of the tools and the skills if you're just going into it with that attitude. The Bible said love believes all things. So if I come at it from a loving standpoint and I really want to make what Barb's saying as important as what I'm saying, then my part is to hear her and to validate her. I don't have to agree with everything that I'm hearing, but I can listen to it, make sure it's accurate as far as what I'm hearing, and then to validate what I'm hearing her say. And you might be watching this right now and say, well, that's just bogus. I mean, I can't do that stuff. I mean, when we get into it, we really get into it, see? And I just can't do that. I can't talk that way. Well, sure you can. If your pastor was sitting right there when you're having that conversation, you'd be amazed at how different your conversation would be. Now let's get real here, because you know that you wouldn't say those things in front of your pastor that you can just say in private. So if you have to visualize your pastor being right there, do it. But the thing that I can guarantee you is the Lord is right there. And because the word says that he will never leave us and never forsake us. And it doesn't say he'll never leave us until you get into a situation where what do they call it, a crucial conversation.
Yeah.
I'll hang out in India or Africa until you're done with that conversation, then I'll come back. It doesn't say that. He's always there. So when you visualize the Lord being present, you think, okay, would this honor the Lord by what I'm about to say? Would I say if Jesus was sitting right there, you know what your problem is? You're probably not going to talk like that. But to hear and validate. See, these are the tools and the skills we're trying to teach on this program. And what I try to do in my mind, Barb, is I think about what the benefits of exercising these tools and skills will be.
Right. In fact, you have a really good example of why it's important to have the right tools.
Right.
And relationships work better when we have good communication tools. And one of them, I think, is about the light switch.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm going to change a light switch and I have to take the plate of the light switch off, well, I can get a crowbar and get that light switch off. I absolutely can. But I break the light switch and I damage the wall if I use that tool. But then somebody introduces me to a screwdriver and they say, hey, if you take those two little screws out, you can take the plate off, and then you can put the plate and the screws back on and you're not breaking anything.
Yeah.
We've got a couple electronic timers on our light switch that control our house lights outside. And so every once in a while, if we have a power failure or the time changes or whatever, daylight savings time changes, then I have to go back in and I have to reprogram those switches to go off in the morning and come on at night. Well, if I program that correctly, and I have a YouTube program that I look up, and I follow those steps exactly in the order that they're giving me on the YouTube program. There's a lot of things you can fix watching a YouTube program, I found out. And so anyway, if I follow those examples, if I follow those steps rather, step by step, then that timer worked perfectly. But one time I thought that I knew how to do it on my own without watching that video. And I programmed it and the lights didn't come on when they were supposed to come on and didn't go off when they were supposed to go off. So I tuned in that program, followed the steps, it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
So there's some real advantages of having those conveniences, with your house, if you just know how to do the timing or do the tool and skill of operating those switches.
Right. So what happens if in your relationship you want to do it better and use the skills, but your partner doesn't? Because I'm a firm believer that even if one person gets healing and starts doing things better, then function begins to overflow into the relationship. So can you address that a little bit? What happens if the other person doesn't want to do it?
Well, and I've run into people like that. That one guy said one time, he said, you know what, these tools and skills are incredible. These are wonderful tools and skills. These tools and skills ought to be taught in school. They really, I believe that too. Yeah. And he was just going on and on about it, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit started speaking to me about what he was saying, and he was just raving about the tools and skills. And I said to him, well, I'm glad you feel that way, but you're not going to do any of them, are you? He said, no, but they're so good. I just wow, it's amazing that he was not going to practice any of them, but he thought they were terrific. See, we have to decide, I'm going to work at this until I get this. Good. I mean, this is not brain surgery here. This is obtainable things that you can do. And what I had to do is get in a mindset to say, I'm gonna work at this until I get this, because you will. if you work at it long enough.
Yes.
But back to your question, what do you do when one person's not willing? Well, you just keep living it out yourself.
Yes.
Because it's still going to work for you if it doesn't work for you as a couple.
Yes.
Because you can't make somebody do the tools and skills.
Yes.
I talked to a guy one time and I said, and I put it all back on me. I said, just to make sure that I've communicated clearly, could you please repeat back to me what you heard me say? And he said, what do I look like, a parrot? He said, I'm not going to repeat what you just said. And he refused to do it. But I kept using that mirroring skill, that paraphrasing skill, where he would say something and I'd paraphrase back what he said just to make sure we were communicating. So you could still use it even if they absolutely will not do that with you. Because it works for me all the time, anywhere I go, and that's what you do.
That's right. And I think we need to praise each other's efforts to learn new things and know that we won't do it perfect, but we'll do it better. And we have to start someplace.
You really do have to start someplace. And our time's gone today, but if you think about doing these things and it just stops you in your tracks and you think, this feels so bogus, I just can't do this. Oh my gosh. Well, we want to encourage you today to think about what you are doing. Is it working? And how effective is it working if you're not willing to learn these tools and skills?
Yeah.
Just think about that and think of how much better it can be if you'll take the chance and the risk to do something different that you haven't done before. Well, God bless you today. Write in your comments. Let us know how we can pray for you. And we will look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless.
God bless.
If you are blessed by this ministry, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also make donations at chucklewisministries.com. Join us to keep uncovering the tools to build better relationships together. Let's do this again next week.